Donovan adjusted his dive mask, the cool salt water a welcome sensation against his skin. He descended slowly, the vibrant colors of the coral reef fading as the sunlight diminished. He was 20 meters down, immersed in the familiar world of branching corals and darting reef fish. This was his fourth dive of the week, part of his ongoing research into the impact of industrial runoff on the delicate ecosystem. He paused, examining a patch of coral bleached white, a stark reminder of the pollution's insidious reach. He made a note on his waterproof tablet, documenting the extent of the damage. Then something shifted. The usual tranquil hum of the reef was replaced by a frenetic energy. A school of parrotfish, normally placid grazers, darted past in a chaotic flurry, their movements jerky and aggressive. A moray eel, typically hidden deep within its crevice, lunged out, snapping its jaws at a passing clownfish, a behavior Donovan had never witnessed. He felt a prickle of unease. Something was fundamentally wrong. He continued his dive, the unsettling feeling growing with each passing moment. A group of surgeonfish, normally cautious and reserved, swarmed around him, their sharp spines extended, their movements unnaturally agitated. He backed away slowly, feeling a growing sense of dread. He'd never seen anything like this in his years of studying marine life. As he swam further, he noticed a patch of algae unlike any he'd encountered before. It pulsed with an ethereal, bioluminescent glow, a mesmerizing electric blue. He cautiously approached, his scientific curiosity overriding his apprehension. He reached out a gloved hand and gently plucked a small sample, placing it in a sterile collection bag. The algae felt strangely warm to the touch, almost as if it were generating its own heat. As he examined the algae, he noticed the surrounding water seemed to shimmer and distort, the blue glow intensifying. The erratic behavior of the fish grew more pronounced. A normally docile sea turtle snapped at a passing grouper, its eyes wide and unfocused. Donovan felt a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just pollution, this was something else entirely. Suddenly, a large shadow passed overhead. He looked up to see the silhouette of a vessel against the surface, its shape vaguely familiar. It resembled a fishing trawler, but something about its lines seemed off. He noticed an array of unusual antennas and equipment on its deck, not typical for a fishing vessel. He made a mental note of its profile, a nagging feeling that it was somehow connected to the strange phenomena he was witnessing. He decided to ascend, the unease he felt now bordering on fear. As he surfaced, he glanced back towards the vessel. It was moving away slowly, seemingly unconcerned with his presence. He climbed back onto his small research boat, his mind racing. The aggressive behavior of the fish, the bioluminescent algae, the mysterious vessel. It all pointed to something unknown, something potentially dangerous. Back on shore, he rushed to his lab, eager to analyze the algae sample. Under the microscope, it revealed a complex, almost crystalline structure unlike any algae he'd seen before. The bioluminescence was even more pronounced in the controlled environment, pulsating with an otherworldly light. He ran a series of tests, noting its unusually high energy output. The algae seemed to be generating an electromagnetic field, a characteristic unheard of in any known species. As he delved deeper into his analysis, the image of the research vessel lingered in his mind. He pulled up a database of registered fishing vessels, scrolling through the entries searching for a match. He found nothing. He then expanded his search to include research vessels, his gut telling him that was the key. After hours of searching, he finally found a match. A research vessel owned by a corporation named Aquatica Industries. He knew the name. Aquatica Industries was a controversial company, known for its aggressive pursuit of genetic engineering and its disregard for ethical boundaries. They had been implicated in several environmental incidents, though always managing to avoid any serious consequences. He felt a chill run down his spine. Could they be behind this? Could this strange algae be the result of one of their experiments? He knew he needed to talk to someone he could trust. He thought of his uncle, Harrison Donovan, a seasoned fisherman who knew the sea better than anyone. Harrison had spent his entire life on the water, and his instincts were rarely wrong. Donovan grabbed his phone and dialed Harrison's number, a sense of urgency gripping him. He had a feeling he was about to uncover something much bigger and much more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Harrison Donovan, Donovan's uncle, answered on the third ring, his voice gruff but laced with a familiar warmth. "Donovan, what is it? You sound like you've seen a ghost." "Uncle Harrison, I need to talk to you. Something strange is happening out on the reef. I found this weird algae and the fish are acting crazy. I think it might be connected to Aquatica Industries. Donovan rushed out, his words tumbling over each other. Aquatica, those devils. Always up to no good, Harrison grumbled. Come down to the docks. We can talk over a cup of coffee. And bring that algae sample with you. Let's see what kind of mess they've cooked up this time. Donovan drove to the docks, the small coastal town shrouded in an ominous gray. The wind howled, whipping the waves into a frenzy. A storm was brewing. He found Harrison on his fishing boat, the Sea Serpent, mending a fishing net. He handed his uncle the sample bag containing the pulsating blue algae. Harrison held it up to the dim light, his brow furrowed. Never seen anything like it. Glows like a firefly on steroids. He examined it closely, then sniffed it cautiously. Smells metallic. Unnatural. As they talked, a battered sailing vessel limped into the harbor, its sails torn, its hull scarred. It looked like it had been through a war. The vessel drifted towards the docks, its crew struggling to control it in the rising wind. Looks like they're in trouble, Harrison muttered, his eyes fixed on the incoming vessel. The vessel finally docked and a figure emerged, stumbling onto the pier. He was dressed in tattered pirate garb, a ragged bandana tied around his head. He was clearly ill, his face pale and clammy, his movements unsteady. He leaned heavily against a mooring post, coughing violently. Help, need help, he rasped, his voice weak and strained. Harrison, despite his gruff exterior, had a soft spot for those in need. He approached the ailing pirate cautiously. What's wrong with you, son? Cursed treasure, the pirate mumbled, his eyes glazed over. Glowing water? He collapsed onto the pier, unconscious. Donovan rushed forward, checking the pirate's pulse. It was weak but steady. He's burning up, Donovan said, placing his hand on the pirate's forehead. He needs medical attention. Harrison looked at the storm brewing overhead. Hospital's a 2-hour drive, and the roads are likely to be flooded soon. We can't risk it. He turned to Donovan. Help me get him aboard the Sea Serpent. We'll take care of him until the storm passes. They carried the unconscious pirate onto the boat and laid him down in Harrison's small cabin. Donovan examined him more closely. His skin was hot to the touch, and he was breathing shallowly. He noticed small, pulsating blue veins under his skin, eerily similar to the color of the algae he had collected. Uncle Harrison, look at this, Donovan said, pointing to the veins. It's the same blue as the algae. I think he might have been exposed to it somehow. Harrison leaned closer, his eyes widening. By the depths, he whispered. What in Neptune's name have those Aquatica folks unleashed? They tended to the pirate, trying to make him comfortable. As the storm raged outside, the pirate tossed and turned, mumbling incoherently about a cursed treasure and glowing water. Donovan couldn't shake the feeling that this pirate, this strange illness, and the bioluminescent algae were all connected, pieces of a puzzle he was only beginning to understand. He looked at the sample of algae sitting on the table, its blue glow casting an eerie light across the cabin. He had a feeling that the answers he sought lay within its strange, pulsating depths. He knew he needed to find out what Aquatica Industries was doing, and he knew he needed to do it fast. The fate of this sick pirate, and perhaps even the ocean itself, might depend on it. The storm raged through the night, battering the Sea Serpent against the harbor wall. Donovan barely slept, his mind consumed by the sick pirate, the strange algae, and the shadowy presence of Aquatica Industries. He checked on the pirate regularly, noting that his fever remained high, his delirium persistent. The pulsating blue veins under his skin seemed to have intensified, glowing faintly in the dim cabin light. As dawn broke, the storm finally began to subside. The wind died down and the waves calmed, leaving a thick, gray mist hanging over the harbor. Donovan stepped out onto the deck, taking a deep breath of the salty air. The storm had cleansed the atmosphere, but the sense of unease remained. He was about to go back inside to check on the pirate when he noticed 3 ships entering the harbor, their sails billowing in the residual wind. They were unlike any fishing vessels he'd seen in the area. 2 were sleek, black-hulled schooners, their lines suggesting speed and maneuverability. The third was larger, a brigantine with a menacing array of cannons protruding from its gun ports. All 3 flew flags Donovan didn't recognize, black banners emblazoned with stylized Kraken symbols. As the ships drew closer, Donovan felt a chill run down his spine. These weren't fishermen. These were pirates. He recognized markings on the brigantine's hull, the same stylized wave pattern he'd seen on the research vessel he'd encountered during his dive. His suspicions solidified. This was no coincidence. These pirates were somehow connected to Aquatica Industries. The 3 ships anchored in the harbor, forming a loose triangle around the sea serpent. Small boats were lowered, and groups of heavily armed pirates rowed towards the dock. Donovan rushed back into the cabin, his heart pounding. "Uncle Harrison, we have a problem," he said, his voice urgent. "3 pirate ships just entered the harbor. They're heading this way." Harrison, who had just brewed a pot of coffee, set down his mug, his expression grim. "Pirates? What in the devil's name are they doing here?" Before Donovan could answer, a loud banging echoed from the deck. "Ahoy, the sea serpent! We demand parley," a gruff voice bellowed. Harrison grabbed a rusty harpoon from the wall, his eyes hardening. "Stay here, Donovan. I'll handle this." He cautiously opened the cabin door and stepped out onto the deck. Donovan followed close behind, peering over his uncle's shoulder. 3 pirates stood on the deck, their weapons drawn. The leader, a tall, imposing figure with a scarred face and a gold earring, addressed Harrison. "We're looking for a man," he said, his voice cold and menacing. "A sick man. Brought here last night during the storm. He belongs to us." Harrison stood his ground, his grip tightening on the harpoon. "I've got a sick man aboard, all right. But he doesn't belong to anyone. He's under my care now." The pirate leader sneered. "He possesses something that belongs to us. Hand him over, old man, and no one gets hurt." "I don't know what you're talking about," Harrison growled. "He's delirious, barely conscious. He has nothing but the clothes on his back." At that moment, the pirate in the cabin stirred. He groaned weakly, then muttered, "The water, the glowing water." The pirate leader's eyes lit up. "He speaks of the treasure. He's inside. Get him." The pirates surged forward, their swords drawn. Harrison swung the harpoon, knocking one pirate back, but the other 2 pushed past him, bursting into the cabin. Donovan watched in horror as they dragged the still weak pirate out onto the deck. The pirate leader grabbed him by the throat, his eyes blazing. "Where is it? Where's the glowing water?" The sick pirate, his eyes still glazed over, pointed weakly towards the harbor. "The source. It calls to me, it calls to them." Donovan realized he was pointing towards the open ocean, towards the area where Donovan had encountered the strange algae. He glanced at the other pirate ships in the harbor. He noticed something odd. They were repositioning themselves, their movements seemingly coordinated, as if responding to an unseen signal. He looked back at the research vessel markings on the brigantine's hull. A chilling realization dawned on him. This wasn't about a treasure. This was about something much bigger, something far more dangerous. He had stumbled into the middle of a corporate conspiracy, and these pirates, these uninvited guests, were just another piece of the puzzle. He knew he had to act fast before the situation spiraled completely out of control. Donovan watched the pirate leader shove the sick pirate roughly towards the brigantine. The other 2 pirate ships began to follow, their movements eerily synchronized. Harrison, still clutching his harpoon, stood beside Donovan, his face etched with worry. "What do they want with him, Donovan?" he asked, his voice low. "I don't think they want him, Uncle Harrison," Donovan replied, his gaze fixed on the receding ships. "I think they want what he has." He explained his encounter with the bioluminescent algae, the strange behavior of the marine life, and his suspicions about Aquatica Industries. He told Harrison about the research vessel he'd seen, and how the markings on its hull matched those on the brigantine. "Aquatica," Harrison muttered, his eyes narrowing. "I knew those devils were up to no good. But pirates? What's the connection?" "I don't know yet," Donovan admitted. "But I intend to find out." He knew he couldn't let the pirates or Aquatica Industries get away with this. He had to uncover the truth no matter the cost. He turned to Harrison. "I need to get back to my lab. I need to access Aquatica's research data. There has to be something there that can explain all this." "Be careful, Donovan," Harrison warned. "Those corporate types are slippery as eels. And those pirates, they're not playing games." Donovan nodded, his determination hardening. "I'll be careful, Uncle Harrison. I promise." He raced back to his lab, his mind racing. He logged onto his computer and began searching for any information he could find on Aquatica Industries and their research activities. He focused his search on bioluminescent algae, genetic engineering, and any mentions of unusual marine behavior. He spent hours sifting through scientific journals, news articles, and online databases, following every lead, no matter how tenuous. Finally, he stumbled upon a leaked internal document from Aquatica Industries. It was a research proposal outlining a project codenamed Project Neptune. The document detailed Aquatica's plans to genetically engineer a new strain of bioluminescent algae that could be used as a highly efficient biofuel. The algae, according to the proposal, would be capable of rapid growth and energy conversion, potentially revolutionizing the energy industry. Donovan scanned the document, his eyes widening as he read. The proposal mentioned a specific gene sequence that had been inserted into the algae, a gene that was known to affect the nervous systems of marine organisms. The document also mentioned a series of field tests that were being conducted in a remote section of the ocean, not far from where Donovan had encountered the strange algae. He scrolled further down, his blood running cold as he read the section on potential risks. The document warned of the possibility of unintended consequences, including the potential for the algae to escape containment and spread throughout the ocean ecosystem. It also mentioned the risk of the algae affecting the behavior of marine life, potentially causing increased aggression and disorientation. Donovan slammed his fist on the desk, his frustration boiling over. "They knew," he exclaimed. "They knew the risks and they did it anyway." He realized that the sick pirate, the aggressive marine life, and the appearance of the pirates were all connected to Project Neptune. The pirate had likely stumbled into Aquatica's test zone and been infected by the experimental algae. The algae's effects on his nervous system were causing his delirium and the strange pulsating veins under his skin. The algae spread throughout the ocean was causing the erratic and aggressive behavior of the marine life. And the pirates, he now suspected, were not there by chance. He reread the section of the Project Neptune proposal detailing the field tests. It mentioned the use of marine mammals, specifically dolphins and whales, as part of the experiment. The document stated that the algae's bioluminescence would be used to track the movements of these animals, allowing Aquatica to monitor the algae's spread and its effects on the marine environment. A chilling thought struck Donovan. What if the pirates weren't actively pursuing the sick pirate, but were being involuntarily guided by their own infected marine navigators? What if the dolphins and whales, their nervous systems affected by the algae, were instinctively drawn to the highest concentration of the algae, the sick pirate? He knew he had to confirm his suspicions. He needed to find out more about Aquatica's research vessel, the one he had seen during his dive. He accessed a maritime tracking database and searched for the vessel's name. He found it, listed as a research vessel currently operating in the vicinity of the pirate ships. He zoomed in on the vessel's location, his heart pounding as he saw its trajectory. The vessel was following the same path as the pirate ships, maintaining a consistent distance. It was as if it was shadowing them, observing their movements. Donovan leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place. The guarded voyage wasn't intentional protection. It was a bizarre side effect of Aquatica's experiment. The altered marine life, drawn to the sick pirate like moths to a flame, was forcing the pirate ships to follow him. The pirate's voyage was a desperate attempt to return to his home island, guided by his own infected crew, while the other pirate crews, also guided by their infected marine navigators, were involuntarily compelled to follow the same path. The illusion of a guarded voyage was a terrifying consequence of a corporate experiment gone horribly wrong. He knew he had to do something. He had to expose Aquatica Industries and their reckless disregard for the environment. He had to find a way to contain the algae before its effects spread further, putting the entire ocean ecosystem and potentially humanity at risk. He picked up his phone and dialed Harrison's number. He had a plan, a dangerous plan, but it was the only chance they had. Harrison stood frozen, his harpoon forgotten in his grip. The two pirates holding the sick pirate exchanged a confused glance. The leader, still gripping the pirate's throat, demanded again, "Where is it? The glowing water?" The sick pirate coughed, a rattling sound deep in his chest. He blinked, his eyes focusing slightly for the first time since he'd arrived. He looked at the pirate leader with a flicker of recognition, then a flash of fear. You don't understand," he rasped, his voice weaker than before. "It's not treasure, not like you think." The leader scoffed. "Don't play games with me. We saw you collect it. The glowing water. Where is it?" The pirate shook his head weakly. "It's a curse, a sickness." He reached inside his tattered shirt, pulling out a small sealed leather pouch. He clutched it tightly, his knuckles white. "This is it. The glowing water. I took it, to study, to understand its power." The leader snatched the pouch, his eyes gleaming with greed. He opened it cautiously, peering inside. Donovan craned his neck, trying to see what it contained. Inside the pouch was a small vial, filled with a swirling, bioluminescent liquid. It pulsed with the same ethereal blue glow as the algae Donovan had collected. "This?" the leader sneered, holding the vial up to the light. "This is your treasure? This pathetic little bottle?" The sick pirate's eyes widened in alarm. No, don't. It's dangerous. The leader laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Dangerous? It looks like water to me. Perhaps a bit sparkly. He uncorked the vial and brought it to his lips as if about to drink. Stop. Donovan shouted, pushing past Harrison and the other pirates. Don't drink it. It's not water. It's contaminated. The leader paused, his eyes narrowing at Donovan. Who are you, boy? And what do you know about this? I'm a marine biologist, Donovan explained, his mind racing. I've been studying this algae for weeks. It's not natural. It's been genetically modified. It's dangerous. The leader's grip on the vial tightened. Genetically modified? What are you talking about? Donovan explained his findings, his encounter with the strange algae, the aggressive behavior of the marine life, and his suspicions about Aquatica Industries and Project Neptune. He explained that the algae was likely the source of the pirates' illness, and that it was spreading throughout the ocean, affecting the nervous systems of marine organisms. The leader listened intently, his expression changing from skepticism to concern. He looked at the sick pirate, then back at the vial in his hand. He cautiously recorked it, his face grim. So, this isn't treasure? He asked, his voice quieter now. The sick pirate shook his head. No, it's a curse. I took it from the source, the glowing waters, hoping to understand its power. But it twisted my mind, made me sick, made my crew sick. He coughed again, his body racked with tremors. The others, they followed me. They want it, they think it's treasure, but they don't understand. It's not power, it's destruction. The leader looked out at the other pirate ships, their movements now making more sense to Donovan. They weren't guarding the sick pirate. They were being drawn to him, compelled by the same unseen force that was affecting their marine navigators. He's right, Donovan said, his voice urgent. The algae is affecting their navigation. Their dolphins, their whales, they're being drawn to the highest concentration of the algae, which is him, the source of the contamination. The leader closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He opened them again, his gaze fixed on Donovan. What can we do? He asked, his voice laced with a newfound respect. Donovan knew that the situation was critical. The algae was spreading, and if it wasn't contained soon, the consequences could be catastrophic. He had to act fast, and he needed the pirate leader's help. We need to get to the source of the contamination, Donovan said, pointing towards the open ocean. We need to find out what Aquatica Industries is doing and stop them. He looked at the pirate leader, his expression pleading. Will you help me? The leader looked at the sick pirate, then back at Donovan. He looked out at the other pirate ships, their crews restless and confused. He knew that his men and the other pirate crews were in danger. He knew that the ocean itself was in danger. He made his decision. He nodded, his gaze firm. Aye, he said, his voice resolute. I'll help you. The pirate leader, whose name Donovan learned was Captain Elias, addressed his crew and the other two pirate captains. He explained, in his own blunt terms, what Donovan had told him about the algae, the sickness, and the involuntary nature of their pursuit. The initial reaction was a mixture of disbelief and anger. Several pirates scoffed, accusing Elias of being tricked by a landlubber scientist. Others muttered about curses and dark magic, unwilling to accept a scientific explanation for the strange events. The captains of the other two ships, wary and suspicious, questioned Elias's judgment. Tensions escalated quickly. One of the captains, a burly man with a fiery temper, drew his cutlass and pointed it at Donovan. This is nonsense, he roared. This whelp is trying to trick us. We've been chasing this treasure for weeks, and we're not about to let some fancy words stop us now. Elias stepped between the angry captain and Donovan, his own hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Stand down, Thorn, he commanded, his voice low and dangerous. I've seen the effects of this curse firsthand. My men are sick, your men are sick, and the sea itself is sick. We need to listen to what the scientist has to say. Thorn hesitated, his eyes burning with anger. He glared at Donovan, then reluctantly sheathed his cutlass. The other captain, a wiry woman with a shrewd gaze, remained silent, observing the exchange with a calculating expression. Donovan knew he had to act quickly before the situation deteriorated further. He explained his plan. He needed to infiltrate Aquatica's research vessel, the one that had been shadowing them. He believed the vessel held the key to understanding the algae's properties and finding a way to contain it. He needed a small, fast boat and a few skilled sailors to help him get there undetected. Elias, after a moment of thought, agreed to provide Donovan with a small, swift sloop and two of his most trusted crew members. He warned Donovan that the research vessel was heavily guarded and that Aquatica Industries was not to be trifled with. "They're playing with fire," Elias said, his voice grim, "and they're about to get burned." As Donovan prepared to depart, the sick pirate, whose name was Jean-Pierre, called out weakly. "Be careful, scientist," he rasped. "The glowing water, it changes things, it twists the mind, it makes monsters." Donovan nodded, his determination hardening. He knew the risks, but he also knew that he couldn't stand idly by while Aquatica Industries poisoned the ocean. He boarded the sloop, the two pirates taking their positions at the oars. As they rowed away from the Sea Serpent, Donovan looked back at the assembled pirate ships, their crews watching them depart with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The tension in the harbor was palpable. The pirates were restless, their uncertainty fueled by the strange events and the conflicting information. The threat of violence hung heavy in the air. Donovan knew that if he failed, if he couldn't find a way to contain the algae, the situation could explode at any moment. The sloop cut through the choppy waters, heading towards the open ocean. The research vessel was still visible on the horizon, its silhouette a stark reminder of the danger that lay ahead. Donovan watched it closely, his mind racing. He had to find a way to get on board, to uncover the truth about Project Neptune and find a way to stop the algae spread. The fate of the ocean, and perhaps even the world, rested on his shoulders. As they approached the research vessel, Donovan noticed increased activity on its deck. Figures moved quickly, their movements purposeful. He saw weapons glinting in the sunlight. He realized that they had been spotted. "They're on to us," one of the pirates hissed, his voice strained. "Faster," Donovan urged, his heart pounding. "We need to get closer." The pirates rowed with renewed vigor, the sloop skimming across the waves. The research vessel began to turn, its bow now pointing directly at them. A loud hailer crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel. You've to identify yourselves." Donovan knew they had no chance of outrunning the research vessel. He had to improvise. "Turn hard to starboard," he shouted to the pirates. "Head towards the stern." The pirates obeyed, the sloop swerving sharply. The research vessel, caught off guard by the sudden maneuver, struggled to adjust its course. Donovan saw his opportunity. "Now," he yelled. "Row for your lives." The pirates pulled on the oars with all their might, the sloop surging forward. They raced towards the stern of the research vessel, dodging a volley of warning shots fired from its deck. Donovan saw a rope ladder hanging down the side of the vessel. He grabbed it, pulling himself up onto the deck. The pirates, following close behind, scrambled up after him. They found themselves facing a group of armed security personnel, their weapons trained on them. Donovan held his hands up in surrender, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he was outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. But he also knew that he couldn't give up. He had come too far and the stakes were too high. He had to find a way to complete his mission, to uncover the truth about Project Neptune and stop the algae spread, no matter the cost. The fate of the ocean, and perhaps even the world, depended on it. Donovan stood on the deck of the Aquatica Industries research vessel, hands raised, flanked by the two pirates. The security personnel, clad in dark blue uniforms, advanced, their expressions grim. A tall, severe-looking woman in a white lab coat emerged from the superstructure, her eyes fixed on Donovan. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" she demanded, her voice sharp and authoritative. "Who are you and what do you want?" "My name is Donovan," he replied, keeping his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I'm a marine biologist, and I'm here to find out what you're doing to the ocean." The woman's eyebrows arched. "And you thought the best way to do that was to storm our vessel with a group of pirates?" "I didn't have much choice," Donovan retorted, gesturing towards the two pirates beside him. "They're not exactly here by choice either. They're victims just like the rest of the marine life in this area." He quickly explained his findings about the bioluminescent algae, its effects on marine life, and his suspicions about Project Neptune. He pointed to the pulsating blue veins visible under the skin of Jean-Pierre, who was being held by two of the security personnel. "This man is sick, poisoned by your experimental algae," Donovan stated, "and your experiment is spiraling out of control." The woman, who introduced herself as Dr. Eris Thorne, head of research for Project Neptune, listened intently, her expression unreadable. When Donovan finished, she let out a sigh, a mixture of frustration and resignation. "You're right, Mr. Donovan," she admitted, her voice surprisingly calm. "Project Neptune has encountered complications. The algae, as you correctly surmised, has escaped containment, and its effects on marine life are more pronounced than we anticipated." Donovan's eyes narrowed. Complications? You call poisoning the ocean and turning marine life into aggressive monsters a complication? Dr. Thorne's face hardened. This research is vital, Mr. Donovan. It has the potential to revolutionize the energy industry, to solve the global energy crisis. A few unforeseen side effects are a small price to pay for such progress. Progress? Donovan scoffed. At what cost? The destruction of the entire ocean ecosystem? The extinction of countless species? Dr. Thorne's gaze turned icy. You're exaggerating, Mr. Donovan. The situation is under control. We're working on a solution, a way to contain the algae and reverse its effects. Really? Donovan challenged. Then why were you shadowing those pirate ships? Why were you monitoring the spread of the algae instead of containing it? Dr. Thorne hesitated, her composure faltering slightly. We were observing the algae's interaction with the marine environment, she said, her voice a little too smooth. Gathering data. It's all part of the research process. Donovan didn't believe her. He could see the guilt in her eyes, the fear beneath her carefully constructed facade. He knew she was hiding something. Take me to your lab, he demanded. I want to see your data. I want to see what you're really doing. Dr. Thorne hesitated again, then nodded curtly. Very well, Mr. Donovan. Follow me. She led Donovan and the two pirates into the research vessel's superstructure, down a series of corridors, and into a large, sterile laboratory. Rows of computers hummed, their screens displaying complex graphs and data streams. Microscopes, centrifuges, and other scientific equipment lined the walls. In the center of the lab was a large, cylindrical tank filled with the pulsating blue algae, its eerie glow illuminating the room. Dr. Thorne gestured towards the tank. This is our primary research subject, she said, her voice strained. As you can see, the algae's growth rate is exponential. Its energy output is far beyond anything we anticipated. Donovan approached the tank, his eyes fixed on the swirling blue mass. He noticed a series of sensors and monitoring devices attached to the tank, their readings flashing rapidly. He examined the data streams displayed on a nearby computer screen, his brow furrowing as he recognized a specific pattern. It was the same electromagnetic signature he had detected in his own lab, amplified 1,000-fold. He turned to Dr. Thorne, his voice tight with anger. You lied, he accused. You said you were trying to contain the algae. But you're not containing it, you're amplifying it. You're making it stronger. Dr. Thorne's face paled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Donovan pressed on, his voice rising. You knew the risks. You knew this algae could be dangerous. But you didn't care. You were so obsessed with your progress, with your revolution, that you ignored the consequences. And now, because of your recklessness, the entire ocean is at risk. Dr. Thorne's composure finally cracked. She sank into a nearby chair, her head in her hands. It was supposed to be a breakthrough, she whispered, her voice barely audible. A solution. We never intended for this to happen. Donovan felt a surge of pity for her, but it was quickly replaced by a renewed sense of urgency. He knew that dwelling on blame wouldn't solve the problem. He needed to find a way to contain the algae, to undo the damage that Aquatica Industries had wrought. He turned his attention back to the data displayed on the computer screen. He studied the algae's electromagnetic signature, searching for a weakness, a vulnerability. And then he saw it. A faint fluctuation in the signal, a subtle shift in the frequency. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. He turned to Dr. Thorne, his eyes gleaming with a newfound hope. I think I know how to stop it, he said, his voice firm. But I need your help. Dr. Thorne looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. Anything, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Anything to stop this. Donovan explained his theory. He had noticed a subtle fluctuation in the algae's electromagnetic signature, a slight variation in the frequency it emitted. He believed this fluctuation was a key to disrupting the algae's communication network, the network that was causing the altered marine life to be drawn to the source of the contamination. He theorized that by generating a counter-frequency, a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse, he could disrupt the algae's communication, effectively blinding the infected marine life and breaking the involuntary guarded voyage effect. The problem was generating such a precise and powerful pulse. He needed access to Aquatica's sophisticated equipment, their specialized generators and amplifiers. He needed Dr. Thorne's expertise to calibrate the frequency and target the pulse effectively. Dr. Thorne, despite her initial hesitation, agreed to help. She led Donovan to a separate section of the lab, a restricted area containing a powerful electromagnetic generator. The generator, she explained, was designed to stimulate the algae's growth and energy output, but with some modifications, it could be repurposed to generate the counter-frequency Donovan needed. Donovan and Dr. Thorne worked feverishly, modifying the generator's circuitry, recalibrating its controls, and fine-tuning the frequency of the pulse. The two pirates, initially wary and suspicious, watched the scientists work, their expressions gradually shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism. As they worked, Donovan contacted Harrison via satellite phone, explaining the situation and his plan. He asked Harrison to relay the information to Captain Elias and the other pirate crews, explaining that the guarded voyage was not a deliberate act, but a side effect of the algae's influence on their marine navigators. He instructed Elias to maintain his current course, heading towards the area where Donovan had first encountered the algae, the presumed epicenter of the contamination. Hours passed, filled with tense calculations, meticulous adjustments, and anxious anticipation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Donovan and Dr. Thorne were ready. The modified generator hummed, ready to unleash its electromagnetic pulse. Donovan took a deep breath, his hand hovering over the activation switch. "Ready?" he asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Dr. Thorne nodded, her face pale but determined. "Ready." Donovan flipped the switch. The generator whirred to life, emitting a low, pulsating hum that quickly intensified into a powerful thrum. The air crackled with energy, the lights in the lab flickering momentarily. The blue glow of the algae in the tank seemed to dim slightly, then pulsed erratically as if struggling against an unseen force. Donovan monitored the data streams on the computer screen, his eyes fixed on the algae's electromagnetic signature. The fluctuation, once subtle and barely perceptible, now became pronounced, chaotic, then gradually began to fade. He looked at Dr. Thorne, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "It's working," he exclaimed. Dr. Thorne let out a shaky breath, her shoulders slumping in relief. "We did it," she whispered. Donovan contacted Harrison again, confirming the success of the pulse. He instructed Harrison to observe the behavior of the marine life around the sea serpent. Minutes later, Harrison's voice crackled over the satellite phone, filled with astonishment. "Donovan, you won't believe this," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "The fish, they're calming down. They're not swarming anymore. They're swimming normally." Donovan relayed the news to Dr. Thorne and the two pirates, their faces lighting up with hope. They contacted Captain Elias, informing him of the successful disruption of the algae's communication network. Elias, initially skeptical, confirmed that his ship's dolphins, once agitated and disoriented, were now swimming calmly, their behavior returning to normal. The other pirate crews reported similar observations. The involuntary guarded voyage was over. The pirate ships, no longer compelled to follow Jean-Pierre's vessel, dispersed, their crews still bewildered but relieved to be free of the unseen force that had guided them for so long. Jean-Pierre, his fever finally breaking, began to recover, the pulsating blue veins under his skin gradually fading. Donovan and Dr. Thorne continued to monitor the algae's activity, ensuring that the counter-frequency remained effective. They knew that the long-term effects of the algae's release were still unknown, and that much work remained to be done to fully contain and reverse its impact on the ocean ecosystem. But for now, the immediate crisis had been averted. The involuntary guarded voyage, a bizarre and terrifying consequence of a corporate experiment gone wrong, had finally come to an end. Donovan, exhausted but exhilarated, looked out at the vast expanse of the ocean, its surface shimmering under the setting sun. He knew that the fight to protect the ocean was far from over, but he also knew that he had made a difference, that he had played a part in preventing a potential ecological catastrophe. And as he looked out at the horizon, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope, a belief that even in the face of corporate greed and scientific hubris, the resilience of nature, and the determination of those who fought to protect it, could ultimately prevail. The consequences of Aquatica Industries' actions, however, were far from over. The escaped algae, while no longer controlling marine life, continued to spread, albeit at a slower rate. Donovan knew this was only the beginning of a much larger battle, a battle to restore the balance of the ocean ecosystem and hold Aquatica accountable for their reckless disregard for the environment. The story of the guarded voyage might be over, but the story of Donovan's fight to protect the ocean had just begun.